In my recent one-shot online, there was a combat with gnolls. And the player playing a dwarven fighter type character, he was confronted with 5 gnolls that stopped in front of the character, and they started laughing as they surrounded this character. And they started laughing at the dwarf, like taunting him to attack. So we skip any initiative, and I'm going to give him the first attack. Now, is there anything in the book that says gnolls will stop and laugh at you and give you the first attack? Is there anything in the book that says that's how you approach combat in D&D? Nope, not at all. But it is one of the greatest tools any game master running a Dungeons and Dragons game, or just about any tabletop role-playing game with combat, has to work with to balance out the situation. You can put any edition in front of me, just about any game. I could barely know the rules, so as I'm putting together a combat, I might be really picking the wrong monster, right? I might be putting you in a very bad situation with your character. I don't know this is going to be a total party kill, given how the math works out on paper. I'm guessing maybe it won't go that way, but you have more experience as a player with that game, and, well, it's going to be really bad. So what would I do? As a game master, did I just blow the game up? Or can I save it? Well, I guess you can cheat and have it where you're fudging the dice in the favor of the player characters. You can do that, but you don't have to. Every monster has something about them. Anger, a unique personality, the creature's instincts going, crazy. Any of this can be applied to the situation at any time, causing the monster or the humanoid enemy to skip taking an action because they're yelling or screaming or talking or you're role playing with that non-player character, or the monster is just so angry that it's not really attacking right away. It's like, screeching, making a loud noise, what have you. Either way, during these moments, these are opportunities, for attacks from the player characters, where now with a couple of these type of rounds, maybe they can actually win the fight that on paper, well, it says they shouldn't. And look, it doesn't matter what edition you're running, you're never trying to, put a combat that is meant for the player characters to encounter, or could be, encountered in that way. You're not putting it in there for a total party kill. Right? In old school, we'll put a monster in there you're not meant to encounter that can kill you, but note, you're not meant to encounter it. When we put encounters in that you're meant to encounter, we don't worry about some perfectly balanced combat, but what we do focus on is you having a chance at victory. It's as simple as that. There has to be an opportunity somewhere in that combat for victory, either on paper, or we put something in the area that you could use on the enemy. You could knock the rocks over, whatever, could wipe out half of them. All these things could happen if the players pay attention when their characters are encountering things. Look, I watch so many, especially modern day dungeon masters of 5e, allow their games to blow up. I still see old school guys allow their games to blow up, right? Even with old school, you could just make a bad combat situation where, hey, it's really you're bad as a DM and not even the player characters. They're losing, but they shouldn't even be in that encounter because that was an encounter meant for them, and there was no opportunity at victory to begin with. By the time you get into the combat, you realize you fucked up. There is no chance of winning, and this was not a monster that you were hinting to the players that they should avoid. So it is on you, the Dungeon Master. You made the mistake. And when that happens, that's when you can jump to the common sense instead of fudging the dice. It's not about protecting the player characters when they're losing a fight fair and square. They're losing, they should have had a chance, their characters might get wiped out here. This is not meant to save them. It's meant to correct any mistakes that you're making. So, for example, recently, before the one-shot, I did a 5e game. And it's I'm new to 5e, doing it. I'm trying to figure out what monsters I want to put in for what encounters. Now, every encounter went well, except for one where I realized that encounter was too much. And what did I do? Did I fudge the dice? Oh, of course not. I used my common sense. Started having the monster act in a certain way. It was humorous for the players. They found it funny. They found it to be realistic. They weren't put off by what was happening. But they didn't clue in right away that because this was happening, they were starting to pick up and win the fight. Where at the start of it, I realized right away this was going to blow up. But when I started doing some of these things where some of the actions were skipped and shit like this because he's freaking out in a way that makes sense to the players, suddenly they have an opportunity, and they did. They turned a fight around and won it that on paper they should have lost. And I'm not trying to protect them from a fair loss. I'm trying to protect them from an unfair loss because I fucked up. Not them, I, the Dungeon Master, fucked up. And I'll be the first one to call myself out right away, and I'll be really honest with you if I fuck something up. So I told the players afterwards, I fucked it up. Every one of them told me they didn't realize. They had no idea there was a mistake there. Again, if you don't use this in a cheap way to save players, who are in a fair fight and losing, certain players won't get sour with you. And there won't be an expectation that you save players from losing a fair fight, right, with their characters. All you do is you want to use this tool to make sure you're not blowing up the game with your own mistakes. And we all know we make them. No matter how much experience we have, sometimes you can know everything you need to know and still make a fucking mistake. So you have to have a tool called common sense to pull your head out of your ass, where you don't get to fudge dice or anything. And the principle of common sense is not just something to be used in combat. It can be used at every part of the game. It's just the book doesn't always explain this shit to you. Actually, it doesn't explain it to you really at all. Right? It doesn't tell you to have the gnolls laugh at the dwarf so he gets that first attack and you don't roll initiative. It doesn't tell you that. You got to figure that out. But you already have the tool. That's a great thing. Common sense is not something you really have to learn. You already have it. You just have to apply it to your thinking when you're approaching a game, even from the point of view of the player. You want to bring some common sense into how you perceive the game and what's going on with your character. But you definitely want a dungeon master that brings common sense to their approach to the game. No matter what edition, no matter what tabletop role-playing game it is. And there's so many people in the hobby today, even guys who have been around for decades, that don't use common sense, because if it doesn't tell you to do it in the fucking book, they don't do it. And there's a certain group that are really guilty of this, that don't use common sense at all. There are people that like it raw, rules as written. You want to see some people throw common sense over a fucking cliff? Go watch these guys, right? They throw it away. They throw it away right away. The majority of people that will use common sense, in their thinking, especially as a dungeon master, are people that are open-minded about homebrewing and making changes. You'll always find those people more open to using their common sense as a dungeon master, game master, whatever label you want to use, than, say, running into a guy who likes to run the game rules as written. Anyway, for now, take care.